The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Today we continue last week's conversation with Father Rod Walton, a priest and bishop in the Old Catholic Church in England. Father Walton spoke on our last show about his work in bereavement rescue using near-death experience reports as a tool for spiritual healing. And one thing more got to mention, the Shroud of Turin, and how that relic played a part in convincing Rod to become a priest. Here to tell us about it today is Father Walton. Rod, welcome back to NDE Radio.
Welcome. Thank you very much. It's great to be back, and good morning to everybody.
Rod, tell the audience a little about the Shroud of Turin in case they don't know about it, and we'll get into what part it's played in your ministry as well.
Yes, the Shroud of Turin, it's 14 feet 5 inches in length, 3 foot 5 inches in width. It's often called by those that investigate it the fifth gospel, and I'm one of the people who call it that. The shroud is most scientifically examined textile. In 1999, over 150,000 hours of scientific testing had already been performed. In the last 10 years, this research has been continued and developed, adding up to a massive scientific commitment to fully investigate the phenomena of the Turin Shroud. The bulk of the investigation was done by STURP. That stands for the Shroud of Turin Research Project. Many people who know about the Shroud always think of the 1988, I think it was, carbon-14 testing, which was inclined to dismiss it. But you've got to remember that was out of 100%, that was 1% that was negative, which would not stand up in court. Answering the actual problem with the carbon-14, physicist Ray Rogers, prior to his death, uncovered the reason why the carbon-14 tests were invalid. The shroud had invisible repairs which were carried out by the Poor Clare nuns after the fire in 1532 in the chapel of Chambéry in France. The samples of the carbon-14 dating had been taken from an area which had not been the original shroud. So conventional 14 testing always destroys the samples. So the samples were taken very carefully. But as far as I understand, the STURP team were not involved here because as far as I can remember, they would have done tests to verify that the pieces had been initially part of the shroud. So hence we had a problem. Unfortunately, when the samples were taken, they come up with I think a 16th century date, which obviously coincides with when the repairs were done to the shroud.
Right. I guess
that's just an overview.
I guess it was a mixture, actually. It was a very clever weaving that they did with the with the repairs. Yes. And so they mixed, as I understand it, they mixed cotton thread in with the flax or the linen.
That's correct.
And so it was kind of a merge date that brought it into the Middle Ages somewhere.
It was. There's quite a bit of cotton in there, but completely enough to throw it right off where it should have been.
Yeah. Now, Pope Francis has called this an icon rather than a relic because there is still, in the mind of the Roman Catholic Church, I guess there's still some unwillingness to commit to the fact that this is the burial shroud of Jesus. But one of the things that always impressed me were the signs of where the blood appeared on the cloth, how that so corresponded to the biblical description of what he went through before he died.
Yes, and on top of that, you've got to remember, the blood was on the shroud before the image, which in itself would be.
Of course, because the blood would be absorbed by the shroud as it was put on. The image was apparently projected during the resurrection. And
exactly. So no scientific, no forger would ever have thought of that way back.
Right. Plus, this is like a photograph and a hologram, and and an X-ray almost all combined in one burst of energy. And, there's never been anything else like it.
No, they can't even do it now with modern technology. They can't seem to do it. I think there's a gentleman who's made a film has offered, I think, £20,000 for anyone who can actually produce the shroud with all of its intricacies. No one has taken it up. No one's taken it up.
So what we have here is a photograph of Jesus.
Correct.
How astounding that is, and what a powerful face. I mean, when they discovered that was a negative and photographed it so that you could see it as a face.
Exactly. Seconda Pierre, he was the man who stopped the ball rolling, wasn't he?
Oh, amazing. Just amazing. Well, they didn't even believe the photograph. They said it was forgery for years until I think maybe in 1930 somebody else took a picture. Was allowed to take a picture, and then they saw that it was that exactly was the face that the first photo had shown.
Exactly.
So how did this bring you into the work you're doing today?
Well, actually, it was very interesting. It's just after I became a Christian, and I was then studying NDEs, and I had a sergeant who was always going around second-hand bookshops, and he knew I'd become a Christian, and he bought this book home for me. It was by the French doctor. I think his name was Barbet or something to that nature. It was an old dusty book, and I started reading it, and wow, that was it. To this day, that was the cause, and now the effect is I study it non-stop.
The book I have is one of the books by Ian Wilson called The Shroud of Turin, and it was written, I think, in 1978, so it was before the carbon dating tests. And so
I've got that one. I've got that one. Actually, he autographed it on my birthday.
Oh, terrific.
I met him on my birthday and he autographed it. So that's a coincidence, that, yeah.
Well, he's been a proponent of the Shroud's authenticity, I guess, for years and years and years.
Yes.
Did you meet? You must have met Ian Wilson.
Yes, I did.
What's he like?
He's a lovely man. Excuse me. I went to one of his lectures and I had the book with me. So I went up and had a chat with him and he's autographed it. And so when you said it, I thought, oh, wow, deja vu.
What do you use this with your bereavement work? Do you use the Shroud of Turin at all?
Well, yes. What I did, this is sort of slightly overlapping. When I used to have health groups, and I'd have a group of people, all willing, who wanted to learn more about, is there a God? Is Christianity viable? Is the scriptures viable? And what I do, the first week, I never mentioned the Bible. I would give them a DVD player, and we'd play on the evidence for near-death experiences and so forth. We'd stop there. We'd have tea and biscuits and a discussion. The second week, again, we don't mention the Bible. And so we get rid of any predetermined ideas, and we have a DVD on the Shroud of Turin with all the evidence and so forth. We have a cup of tea, biscuits, and a discussion. Then the third week, I bring in the scripture. By then, I've cancelled out all the ambiguities of there's no life after death, and you can't trust the Bible.
One of the little videos I watched, there's quite a lot on YouTube about all of this, with both points of view.
Yes.
But one of the videos I watched made the point that Jesus said the only sign he was going to give of what was to come, I guess. I don't have the
sign of Jonah.
Oh, yes, this is the sign of Jonah.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah.
It's Luke 11:29. The only sign I will give them is the sign of Jonah.
Exactly.
And there's a big 3 that came from the blood on his forehead, and also, I guess, on other parts of his body. And that 3 is, of course, being in the whale 3 days and 3 nights.
I'm looking at that picture as we speak.
Oh, okay.
That is incredible. Yeah, the big 3 on the front of them.
Yeah, it's so clear. And the fellow who was making, I don't know if he had done forensics. I think he probably had, because he said he'd never seen blood make a figure 3 before. In any kind of forensics work. It usually just sprays or drips, but it doesn't form the number 3. And so he attributed attributes it to Jesus actually doing what he said he was going to do, is give that sign.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, interesting also, the blood is AB, which is quite rare, and it comes normally from the Middle East. So again, that's an interesting link.
Yes. What the face, the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox teach that icons are like windows to heaven.
Yes.
And from that point of view, what Pope Francis said about this face is truly correct, that this is an icon to meditate on.
Without a doubt.
The eyes, I guess in the sepia color seem more open, and then in the negative, reversed, you get the eyes closed. Yeah. The face is so powerful. And
we've also got the coins that have been detected on the eyes.
Ah, okay, I didn't know about that.
Yes, there've been coins. There's coins been detected on the eyes, and they reckon they can take them back to Pilate's reign, which is interesting.
That's true, because it'd be unlikely that any forger in the Middle Ages would have access to.
Yes, I think there's a gentleman called Professor Francis Philos. He teaches at Loyola University in Chicago, and he's done a lot of work on it, and as far as I understand, they've actually seen the coins. Mm. And you can actually, if you see a coin from Pilate's reign and you can see a close-up, you can see the little loop at the bottom.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if this, one of the physics discussions that I listened to on one of these videos, said this light was like a laser-like light, and that DNA itself puts out a light like that.
Yes.
That we are, in effect made of light, which
goes back to the NDEs.
Right, which actually does. Well, that same light that we're going toward as we go through that tunnel is the light that must have been the burst of energy that projected Jesus' image against the cloth.
Exactly, and also it links up with St. Paul's experience on the road to Damascus when he saw a light.
Yes. Yeah.
And when Jesus was transfigured on the Mount of Transfiguration, it said his garments glowed like the sun, didn't it?
Yes.
So it all dovetails, doesn't it?
It does, and the power of this light imagery, which actually transcends just Christianity. It goes through many, many religions.
Yes, it does.
Many different faiths. This idea of light being the source, and also the nature of ourselves. The better nature of ourselves at any rate.
Yes, yeah. And also we got the other factor where there's the actual nail marks are on the actual wrist, not through the palms, because that in itself, if you look at all the paintings through history, they were always going through the palms. But when you come to the shroud, it goes through the wrist.
Because the palm wouldn't support the weight of the body anyway.
But any forger would have put it through the wrist at that point. Mm. But I think the first crucified man was found in 1968 in a suburb of Jerusalem. It wasn't till then that they realized, wow, they go through the wrist. And if you actually touch the desktop space, which is in the actual wrist, the median nerve is touched and it makes the thumbs come in. So again, that would be anatomically perfect.
That's the shape of his hands?
Yeah, if you look on the shroud, there's no thumbs. And so if you actually touch, there's a nerve called a desktop space. It touches the median nerve. The median nerve, when it touches, makes its thumbs draw in.
Wow.
And the shroud have got no thumbs. So that would be anatomically perfect.
Because of the distortion from the nail going through the...
Exactly. It would make the thumbs turn in.
Well, some of the other things, there's, of course, that shows blood from the feet, hundreds of small abrasions on the back and torso where he was whipped.
Yeah. Yes.
Bruises on the shoulders where he carried the cross, supposedly.
Yes.
And
on the nose.
And blood in the hair and the crown of thorns, blood from the crown of thorns.
Yes, exactly. And the spear in the side and this blood and water coming out. Yeah.
And they said that was a post-mortem stab, so that he had apparently had already died, and that's when the soldier. That's that whole other legend about the spear.
Destiny, the Spear of Destiny.
Spear of Destiny, and then Hitler is all involved in that.
That's
in that
right.
story.
He wanted to get his hands on it.
I don't know. Was he able to get it?
No, he never achieved it. But he put a lot of effort into getting it.
I had heard that it was in a museum in Austria or something, and that he had.
I'd heard that.
That he had. I don't know why he couldn't have gotten it from there.
No. Unless they hid it at the time. He was bad enough. He was bad enough without it, so.
Well, I think if the thing about that spear was that if you dropped it or did something, you could lose the power of it just as quickly as you could gain it. So.
Yes. And also we've got the pollen factor, which we've got another factor which has got pollen.
Yeah, tell us about that. I didn't really get into that.
Yeah, there was pollen found on the shroud. Could only have come from Jerusalem around the time of Jesus was crucified, at the specific time of the Passover, and there's nowhere else in the world it grows, only there. So what forger would have thought about putting pollen onto there? So years later, when we got all the technology, we could find it.
Mm. Now, one of the things they've said about doing further carbon dating testing is that they've put it into a box that has been treated with some sort of preservative that is so powerful that it could have easily alter the accuracy of any tests. Yeah. But there were a few strands that had survived the 1988 test, and they could work with those. I think there's some
people out there who've got it as well. I think there are certain people who have got some strands.
They said if they could get them from some of those inner burn marks.
Yeah.
That might work. That they could use those, even though because they could flush off the. I should tell the audience that there was damaged by fire in 1500, something like that.
That's correct. 1513, I think.
There was a church fire and it melted some silver that this was encased in, and the silver burned through the linen. But anyway, that would be the inside of the material. I guess those burns were never repaired, were they?
No, they weren't. But the interesting point there, Lee, is that if you look, I think there's a prayer cloth. It's called the prayer cloth, which can be dated. And on the prayer cloth, it's got a picture of the shroud with the burn marks in them.
Oh, tell me, where does that?
Yeah,
where's that?
There's a prayer cloth that's actually got holes in the actual on the actual photo on the prayer cloth. It's actually got a shroud on it, painted on it, but they've painted the holes already in them. So it must have been a copy of the shroud, having the holes in them.
Oh, and when?
So that you can actually get a date. So it must have been prior to that date that the shroud was around. And you've also got the Cedarium.
Oh yes, tell me about that too, because
the Cedarium is very interesting. It's the Cedarium of Oviedo, and it's kept in Spain in a cathedral. I forget the name of the San Salvador, Oviedo in Spain. And again, this is the word Cedarium means sweat cloth. Mm-hmm. It was the cloth that was put round the head of Jesus, and there's actual blood on it. But the interesting bit is the blood is AB again, same rare blood as on the shroud. Yeah, and also you had two scientists and a man called Mark Gussin. They used infrared and ultraviolet photography, and electron microscopy, I get it right in a minute, have shown that both the Cedarium and the shroud have touched the same face.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that a DNA thing, or was it just the similarity of the blood, or this?
Oh, it's everything. They can actually hold the shroud up and hold the actual other item up, Cedarium, and it's identical.
So the blood wounds from the crown of thorns
correct
shows up in the same places on both.
Yes, exactly. Fabrics. It all dovetails together. And the actual, but the interesting bit is with the Cedarium, they can date that quite well. It's got a good history.
Is there a history on how it got to Spain from?
Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure on that, but as far as I understand, the history is very, very, very good for the Cedarium.
Mm-hmm. Because they made it sound like the shroud just appeared in Europe during the Middle Ages, but I mean, with Crusaders coming and going all the time, it could have made its way to Constantinople and then been brought back to the West from there.
And again, you had the cloth of Odessa. The cloth of Odessa was a face sort of cloth of Jesus, but at the same time the cloth of Odessa disappeared, the shroud come into being. So people think it could be the same item.
That's right. It was folded up. It was folded in a frame, and it was sent to who was it? A king or someone?
Yes, and it was they found it in a building when they were knocking the building down, hidden.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it was sent to help heal somebody. That's correct. Powerful.
It was. I forget the name of the king, but he got healed and he converted to Christianity.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So when that Odessa one disappeared, the shroud come into being, and I think there's continuity there.
Yes. Well, there must be some healing power in the shroud in that case.
My goodness, yeah.
I mean, people make pilgrimages to Lourdes and Medjugorje. They could also be going to Turin and dropping into the cathedral there.
Without a doubt. But I mean, the evidence, we've only just touched on little bits, but I mean, it's incredible evidence.
Yeah. No, as a priest, although I know you're not Roman Catholic, what do you think about this, the notion of relics and the part they've played in the history of the church?
I'm not pro relics. I'm the only thing I'm pro is, i.e. the shroud and the Cedarium, because I'm very much got my police head on where I can actually I want to see the evidence.
Yes.
If it's really connected, the real deal, which I have no doubt the shroud is, and the Cedarium, I think it was meant to be. But anything that's not provable and has got any question marks, I wouldn't be interested in.
Mm. Well, there were so many cathedrals and churches built that needed relics. There were probably more churches than relics.
Exactly.
A lot of that stuff got forged.
You've got to have a skeptical head on, but you've also got to keep your mind open and your eyes open and say, this is the real deal.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the Knights Templar had anything to do with...
Yes, I do. In fact, I was going to mention that. I think the Knights Templar had the shroud for a period of time, especially after the Odessa incident.
Mm. They were accused, one of the accusations that were made against them was that they worshipped a head.
Yes.
Maybe it was the head of Jesus in the frame of the
Odessa cloth.
Yes.
Yeah, I think personally the Odessa cloth was the head which they were worshipping, and I think when obviously the Odessa cloth went, the shroud came on exactly the same period. It's too much of a coincidence.
And of course they were in the Middle East, so they would have had many opportunities to come across this thing and
exactly. And you've got the pollen trail is very, very convincing as far as I'm concerned. That pollen trail, and also you've got the art. At a certain time in history, when all of a sudden Jesus' image changed, he became bearded and long-haired. And if you look at the art, it's exactly the same as the shroud. And before that, you had Jesus with short hair and clean-shaven. So again, it was actually influencing the art of the time.
Have you run across any people who've had meetings with Jesus through near-death experience who see a similarity in?
Yes. I was talking to a few, about a month ago, and the shroud came into it. I brought it into it, and they said, "Yep, this is it. This is how he looked."
Because there was one.
In fact, I think you've had one on your program. I won't name the person, but I think I was speaking to her, and she spoke and said, "Yeah, this is how he looked."
Okay. Because there was one person who had near-death experience. I guess it was one of those. One of the little boys, I think, that they maybe made a movie about, and he found a picture on the internet. Wasn't this, and it wasn't actually like this, that he thought.
That was the one that the little girl, she'd painted it.
Exactly.
And his dad said to him, and he said, "Yeah, that's him." and it was the one that she had painted.
But I did look it up. I haven't seen it for a long time, but it seems to me that it was much more modern than you would describe this face of Jesus.
Oh yes, I agree
the
completely.
Shroud.
Yeah, I agree completely. But the person I spoke to recently said that the person on the shroud looked like the person they met.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. More confirmation.
And very much so. I mean, I always try and look at it as with a police mind that everything I've said here would stand up in court.
Yes.
And now we've got to take away the carbon-14 dating because that's been proved to be defective, which means we're left with 100% positive evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Which is...
And the miracle that nobody else has been able to do anything like this.
Exactly. The biggest miracle here is no one can do it. Yeah, exactly. That's a miracle in itself when they offer money and no one can.
There's no evidence that it was painted, that it's not a two-dimensional photograph. It's got all of the characteristics of this holographic burst of energy that created this three-dimensional image.
And it's just on the surface.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not seeped in or anything like that. It's stayed on the surface.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is. Well, listen, I think we're pretty much shooting through our half hour here. Maybe we could swing back to near-death experience.
Yes.
For a moment and talk about how your center is going, where things are.
Actually, today, as we speak, we're putting in for the grant. It's actually, in fact, this program is going to be put on when we send the grant up. We're actually going to send a link to the program we're doing today.
Good. Well, and to last week's.
And to last week's already on it.
Yes, because last week's is much more relevant to the work you're doing with near-death experience now.
Yeah, we put last week's on it, but I said to Caroline, wait till I've done today so they can have both.
Yeah.
To see where the direction we're going in. So we're very excited about it. We've looked at 2 or 3 yesterday, which we really, really like, and we're putting it in today. So we're saturating the time with prayer and putting it in God's hands.
Well, I think God is going to be very supportive of the work you're doing because it's so much in line with what He's presenting to us. As you say, when you put your policeman's hat on, this is real evidence. This is not made up by one religion or another denomination. This is what's actually happening. Yeah. This is where we get to look through either the face of Jesus or through the experience of near death and see the other side for what it is.
It's not pie in the sky. In fact, I don't do that. I've always got to have evidence. I like it because the reason being, when you're talking to other people and you're trying to explain it to them, the first thing, especially in the police, they say, "Oh, what's the evidence?" Well, I could always relate and say, "This is the evidence," and they would react to that and positively, and it's great.
Wow. Well, listen, in the minute we've got left, Rod, why don't you tell folks again how they can get a copy of your book or find out more about bereavement comfort that you're providing? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, our book is on Amazon. You can download it on our site, which is www.bereavementrescue.org.uk. You can download it for free, or if you want to buy it on Amazon, by all means. But if you haven't got the money, don't worry. You can get it free on our website. And if you need any help, get in contact with us, whoever you are out there. Or if you want to chat, and we're here to help you.
Very good. Well, Rod, thanks once again for a really interesting show.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And for talking about something that I've always been interested in, and I was glad that you were able to come on and remind me of all the amazing things about the Shroud of Turin.
It was great to talk to you.
Yeah. If the folks out there would like to listen to this show again or any of our past shows, just go to our website at nderadio.org, and for more information about the work of IANDS and the upcoming conference in Denver, check out that website, iands.org. And tune in next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.